The golden age of Hollywood is remembered as a world of perfection. Flawless faces, romantic heroes, elegant stars who seemed larger than life. Studios sold the idea that these people were not just talented, but almost unreal. Clean, refined, desirable in every way. But what if the biggest lie of Hollywood wasn't about love affairs or secret addictions, but about something far more basic? What if the real problem was the human body itself? Behind the cameras, Hollywood wasn't just hiding scandals, it was hiding habits, smells, behaviors so ordinary, so deeply physical, that audiences would have been unable to separate the star from the screen. These weren't shocking crimes or dramatic betrayals. They were everyday realities that shattered the illusion of glamour the moment you got too close. Former makeup artists, assistants, and crew members have all said the same thing. The hardest part of their jobs wasn't the long hours or the pressure, it was pretending nothing was wrong. Schedules were rearranged, camera angles were changed, marks were moved. Entire sets adapted around the private realities of a single star. And no one complained because complaining meant disappearing. Hollywood created a silent rule. The more valuable you were, the more everyone else had to tolerate. A young actor who spoke up was replaced. A legend who caused problems became untouchable. This wasn't about eccentricity. It was about power. Tonight, we're not exposing scandals. We're exposing the system that decided some people were worth protecting at any cost, even when the truth was uncomfortable, embarrassing, or outright revolting. These stories were buried not because they were unbelievable, but because they were too believable. And we're starting with the biggest name of them all. One Clark Gable, the king with a rotting mouth. Whenever Clark Gable stepped onto a film set, women around the world swooned. With his commanding presence and devilish grin, he embodied masculine perfection. But the actresses who had to kiss him knew a very different Gable, one whose breath could wilt flowers, and whose dentures hid horrors no camera could ever capture. His mouth, they said, smelled like a cemetery. Vivien Leigh reportedly confided to her assistant after filming their famous scenes in Gone with the Wind. Kissing him was like embracing decay. The problem began in Gable's 30s, when severe gum disease and years of neglect caused him to lose most of his natural teeth. MGM quickly arranged top-quality dentures, but what the studio could not control was what Gable did with them. According to a set assistant who worked on Mutiny on the Bounty, Gable would remove his dentures between takes and leave them wherever was convenient. Once, they were found wrapped in a handkerchief and tucked behind a plant, left there for hours under the heat of the studio lights. This careless treatment created the perfect environment for bacteria. Combined with heavy smoking, drinking, and reported indifference to oral hygiene, the situation became unbearable. One MGM makeup artist later described it bluntly as a war crime in his mouth. The studio accepted that the problem could not be fixed, only managed. Directors scheduled kissing scenes early in the morning, when his mouth was considered freshest. Script girls were instructed to offer mints constantly. Makeup artists mixed strong peppermint spirits to mask the odor, but nothing truly worked. Actresses developed their own survival tactics. Joan Crawford reportedly smeared Vicks VapoRub beneath her nose. Claudette Colbert insisted on turning her head at the last second so Gable would kiss her cheek instead of her lips. The double standard was clear. When a young contract actress complained, she was removed from the picture the next day. When Loretta Young raised the same concern, the producer replied, "He's Gable. You'll deal with it." While women in theaters fantasized about being kissed by Hollywood's perfect leading man, women on set learned to brace themselves and endure. To Marlon Brando, the method actor who skipped the method of bathing. Marlon Brando revolutionized acting. His performances were raw, natural, and intensely human. On screen, he redefined masculinity for an entire generation. Off-screen, working with Brando meant accepting a reality most people found impossible to ignore: his smell. According to a costume designer who worked on The Godfather, Brando often smelled like a dumpster fire. His hygiene issues went far beyond skipping the occasional shower. He routinely wore the same clothes for days, sometimes weeks, regardless of sweat, stains, or spilled food. Comfort mattered more to him than appearance, and once he liked how something felt, he refused to change it. During the filming of Apocalypse Now, director Francis Ford Coppola allegedly begged Brando to change his shirt after 5 consecutive days in the Philippine jungle heat. Brando refused. Crew members later said the odor clung to sets long after he had left. But Brando's most revolting habit involved food. He hid snacks around film sets behind radiators, under cushions, inside hollowed-out books, then forgot about them for days or weeks. When he rediscovered them, mold and decay didn't stop him. He examined the food briefly, shrugged, and ate it anyway. A property master recalled finding half-eaten cheese sandwiches growing fuzzy with mold, only to watch Brando consume them without hesitation. Richard Pryor later joked that Brando smelled like a dead sandwich and ate things that would make a vulture hesitate. Brando also routinely ate off other people's plates without asking and reached into communal food bowls with unwashed hands. Directors quietly adapted. Extra ventilation was added. Air fresheners were placed strategically. Cast members sensitive to smells were kept at a distance. Despite everything, no one confronted him. He was Marlon Brando. His talent outweighed the discomfort he caused. For lesser actors, this behavior would have ended careers. For Brando, it became another unspoken rule everyone learned to live with. 3. Howard Hughes. From Hollywood titan to a collector of his own decay, Howard Hughes began as one of Hollywood's most glamorous figures. A powerful producer, a daring aviator, a wealthy playboy linked to the most beautiful women of his era, he represented excess, control, and ambition at the highest level. But the man who once commanded studios and skies ended his life surrounded by something far less glamorous. By the 1,950 seconds, Hughes' growing fear of germs had turned inward. Terrified of public bathrooms, he began urinating into empty bottles, carefully sealing and storing them. By the 1,960 seconds, those bottles numbered in the hundreds. Staff members assigned to his Las Vegas penthouse said each one was labeled with obsessive precision date, time, and even color. As his isolation deepened, his hygiene collapsed. Hughes stopped bathing regularly. He sat naked for days at a time in darkened hotel rooms, watching the same films on repeat. His hair grew long, greasy, and matted. His beard spread across his chest. His fingernails and toenails were allowed to grow unchecked, curling and thickening into yellowed claws. Nurses assigned to his care described nails so long they trapped dirt, dead skin, and bodily residue beneath them. He refused to let anyone trim them. He also stopped brushing his teeth. Staff recalled pieces of his teeth occasionally breaking off, which Hughes would examine with detached curiosity. Perhaps most disturbing was his tissue ritual. Hughes used Kleenex for everything, blowing his nose, wiping his body, cleaning himself, then stacked the used tissues neatly in piles around the room. Some stacks reached the ceiling. Guards later said Hollywood's richest man lived among waste, rotting food, and bodily fluids. By the early 1,970 seconds, Hughes weighed under 100 pounds. The man who once embodied power and glamour had become a skeletal recluse, preserved only by wealth that ensured no one could intervene. 4. Montgomery Clift. The sensitive icon who never stopped digging, Montgomery Clift was seen as one of Hollywood's most sensitive and intelligent actors. His performances in films like From Here to Eternity and A Place in the Sun revealed a vulnerability few male stars dared to show. On screen, he was poetic and restrained. Off-screen, he shocked everyone around him with a habit he never bothered to hide. According to multiple crew members, Clift was an unapologetic nose-picker and booger eater. He did it during rehearsals, between takes, and sometimes mid-conversation. An assistant director recalled watching Clift stop in the middle of a line, dig into his nose, examine what he found, pop it into his mouth, and continue the dialogue without missing a beat. Makeup artists were forced to deal with the aftermath. One kept special tissues on hand specifically for Monty duty. A veteran makeup artist later joked, "I worked with children, animals, and Montgomery Clift. The children eventually grew up. The animals could be trained." The habit became so frequent that it turned into a production concern. During the filming of The Misfits, director John Huston reportedly established a strict no-picking rule during active shooting after Clift nearly ruined a take with Marilyn Monroe by digging in full view of the camera. What made the behavior especially jarring was the contrast. Publicity photos showed refinement and elegance. Between takes, Clift displayed the hygiene awareness of a preschooler. Crew members said it was impossible to reconcile the heartbreaking performances with what they witnessed moments later. After Clift's devastating car accident in 1956, his reliance on painkillers and alcohol reportedly intensified the behavior. By the end of his career, people no longer tried to stop him, they simply looked away. Brilliant on camera, disgusting between takes. Another illusion Hollywood chose not to break. 5. Paul Lynde. The center square who hid lace beneath the laughter. To millions of Americans in the 1,970 seconds, Paul Lynde was television's sarcastic uncle. The sharp voice, the perfectly timed innuendo. As the center square on Hollywood squares, he became a fixture of safe, mainstream comedy. What viewers never saw was what Lynde wore beneath his tailored suits. According to his longtime housekeeper, Lynde owned an extensive collection of women's lingerie. Not novelty pieces, not jokes. Full sets, bras, panties, slips, and lace garments custom-fitted to his size. The collection filled drawers and closets, carefully organized and meticulously maintained. Lynde reportedly wore women's underwear under his tuxedos, suits, and television wardrobe. He did so while hosting events, appearing on camera, and attending formal Hollywood gatherings. It wasn't accidental, and it wasn't occasional. It was routine. Friends later said the lingerie served as a private comfort. Under harsh studio lights and constant pressure to perform, it gave him a sense of control and calm. But that secret came with strain. Lynde lived in constant fear of exposure in an era where such revelations would have destroyed his career overnight. On one rare occasion, the secret nearly surfaced. During a party at his Palm Springs home in the early 1,970 seconds, Lynde allegedly jumped into the swimming pool while intoxicated, revealing a pink teddy beneath his clothes. Those present were close friends and industry insiders. The moment was quietly buried. Publicly, Lynde remained a joke machine. Privately, he carried a secret he could never share. The laughter made him famous. The silence kept him employed. Another illusion. Another compromise. Another rule Hollywood enforced without ever saying it out loud. 6. Tallulah Bankhead. The star who refused to wear anything underneath. Tallulah Bankhead was famous for her husky voice, razor-sharp wit, and complete lack of restraint. On stage and on screen, she radiated confidence and danger in equal measure. Off camera, that lack of restraint became something far more literal. Bankhead openly refused to wear underwear. She claimed she had gone commando since 1918 and saw no reason to ever change. To her, undergarments were not only uncomfortable, but an insult to personal freedom. This was not a private eccentricity. She made sure everyone around her knew. Costume designers and stage managers quickly learned that modesty was not part of Bankhead's vocabulary. During costume changes, she ignored robes and privacy screens, stripping down in full view of cast and crew while carrying on conversations as if nothing were unusual. One electrician later remarked that working with her was a show on screen and a full performance off it. Her refusal to wear underwear created real production problems. Camera angles had to be carefully planned, wind machines were tightly controlled, dresses were weighted down to prevent accidents. After a notorious Broadway incident in which theatrical smoke caused her dress to lift and expose her completely to the front row, producers implemented what became known as the Tallulah Protocol. Extra weights were sewn into hemlines. Blocking was adjusted. Backup plans were prepared for inevitable wardrobe failures. Unlike most stars, Bankhead showed no embarrassment. When a young stagehand once froze after accidentally walking in on her mid-change, she reportedly smiled and said, "What's the matter, darling? Haven't you ever seen a real star before?" For Bankhead, refusing underwear wasn't just about comfort, it was defiance. In an era of corsets, girdles, and rigid control, her body was the one thing she refused to bind. 7. Bette Davis, the queen who turned sets into spittoons. Bette Davis ruled Hollywood with ferocity. Her eyes burned through the screen, her performances dominated every room, and her reputation made directors nervous and crew members cautious. But on set, her most infamous habit had nothing to do with acting. Davis was a relentless chain smoker, often going through 3 or 4 packs a day. Combined with her habit of chewing gum, and at times chewing tobacco, it created what crew members quietly called a saliva problem. The studio solution was simple and humiliating for everyone else: spit buckets. Small receptacles were placed strategically around the set so Davis could expel the buildup of tobacco-stained saliva whenever she pleased. The problem was her aim. According to grips and set decorators, she frequently missed. The area around her chair became known as the splash zone. One crew member recalled that working near Davis meant constantly watching the floor. Shoes were ruined. Marks had to be wiped down between takes. When production assistants were assigned to empty and clean the buckets, they were expected to do so without comment or visible discomfort. Davis tolerated no reaction. When one young assistant gagged while emptying a spit bucket, she reportedly snapped, "If you can't handle the realities of making pictures, go work in a florist shop." The habit fueled tensions with co-stars. During the filming of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Davis's already hostile relationship with Joan Crawford worsened after Davis allegedly spat near Crawford's mark before a scene. Crawford, a known germaphobe, refused to stand there, forcing a complete lighting reset. By the 1,960 seconds, some crews quietly placed small rugs beneath Davis's usual positions so they could be removed and cleaned between setups. Her talent was unquestioned. The mess was simply part of the cost. Another legend. Another mess everyone learned to step around. 8. Peter Lorre, the genius everyone feared watching take off his shoes. Peter Lorre created some of Hollywood's most unforgettable characters. His unsettling gaze and distinctive voice made him the perfect choice for sinister, intelligent roles. But what his co-stars feared most wasn't what he did on camera, it was what he did the moment the cameras stopped rolling. According to multiple assistant directors, Lorre had a compulsive ritual before any major dialogue scene. He would remove his shoes, then his socks. Then he would begin inspecting his feet in detail, picking at calluses, cleaning between his toes, sometimes even sniffing his fingers afterward. This was not occasional behavior, it was routine. Humphrey Bogart reportedly warned director John Huston before filming The Maltese Falcon, "Just give Peter 5 minutes with his feet before important scenes." It's easier than fighting it. Lorre claimed the ritual helped him concentrate, arguing that physical discomfort distracted from emotional performance. Others were less charitable. Script supervisors jokingly referred to it as method fungus. Crew members described watching a cultured European intellectual calmly discussing philosophy while digging at his feet, then immediately returning to the set. The problem didn't end when the shoes went back on. After extended foot sessions, Lorre often handled props, shook hands, or touched communal objects without washing his hands. Production assistants were quietly tasked with placing hand sanitizer, its era-appropriate equivalent, within reach, though he rarely used it. The behavior became such a known issue that some actors reportedly added informal conditions to their contracts, requesting that Lorre's chair be positioned outside their line of sight during breaks. Sidney Greenstreet, his frequent co-star, allegedly insisted on never seeing Lorre's feet again after one particularly graphic session. Brilliant performer, cultured mind, persistent hazard. Another contradiction Hollywood learned to accommodate. 9. Judy Garland, the child star Hollywood taught to destroy herself. Judy Garland's voice defined a generation. Her vulnerability on screen made audiences feel protected, comforted, and hopeful. But behind that image was a habit so destructive it was engineered by the studio itself. From the age of 13, MGM placed Garland on a strict regimen of diet pills, amphetamines, and appetite suppressants to keep her thin. When those drugs caused uncontrollable hunger, exhaustion, and anxiety, the solution offered wasn't care, it was control. Studio executives and even her own mother encouraged her to purge. They didn't call it bulimia. They called it weight management. Garland learned to vomit quietly, quickly, and discreetly. During the filming of The Wizard of Oz, she was just 16 years old when she began excusing herself after meals, returning with fresh makeup to hide bloodshot eyes. The behavior became routine, not just tolerated but expected. As filming schedules tightened, even bathroom breaks became a problem. A wardrobe assistant later revealed that Garland once vomited into her own purse rather than delay a scene. She knew stopping production meant screaming, punishment, and more pills. The habit followed her beyond MGM. During concert tours, venue managers were instructed to place receptacles backstage so she could purge between songs. Crew members recalled watching her sing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," then rush off stage to be violently ill moments later. Years of forced vomiting caused severe dental damage, throat injuries, and dangerous electrolyte imbalances. These conditions contributed directly to the physical collapse that ended her life at just 47. Garland's habit wasn't eccentric, it wasn't private, it was manufactured. A system broke a child, then applauded the performance. 10 W.C. Fields, the comedian who used plants as toilets. W.C. Fields built his career on contempt. His dry wit, misanthropic humor, and open disdain for social norms made him one of Hollywood's most distinctive comedians. Off-screen, that contempt took a form so crude it stunned even seasoned industry insiders. Fields regularly urinated in potted plants. This wasn't an occasional drunken mistake. It was a habit. According to multiple crew members and party hosts, Fields disliked public restrooms and considered them beneath him. His solution was simple. Whenever he needed relief, he found the nearest large potted plant. Witnesses recalled Fields turning his back to the room, positioning himself casually, and relieving himself while continuing conversations as if nothing unusual were happening. The first time people saw it, they assumed it was a joke. The second time, they realized it wasn't. Studio executives and wealthy hosts learned to Fields-proof their spaces. Valuable plants were removed or replaced with artificial ones when he was expected to attend. On one film set, an imported palm was reportedly killed after repeated incidents, prompting the director to order all real plants replaced with fake greenery. The smell didn't bother him. Fields would zip up, turn around, and continue telling stories while a puddle formed at the base of the plant. Others pretended not to notice. His behavior became such an open secret that fellow comedians mocked it. Groucho Marx was said to follow Fields at a party, placing small, out-of-order signs on plants he had just visited. The man who mocked social decency on screen lived that contempt in real life. Hollywood didn't stop him. They adapted. Because even public urination became acceptable when the box office numbers were high enough. The golden age of Hollywood wasn't built only on talent and beauty. It was built on tolerance, on silence, on an unspoken agreement that some people were simply too valuable to confront. These stories weren't hidden because they were unbelievable. They were hidden because they were too human. Smells, habits, bodies that refused to stay perfect once the camera stopped rolling. Hollywood understood something early on. If the illusion cracked, the fantasy collapsed with it. So the system adapted. Crew members learned when to step back. Co-stars learned when to look away. Fixers learned how to rearrange reality without ever fixing the problem. And the higher the star climbed, the more everyone else was expected to endure. What's most unsettling isn't how disgusting some of these habits were. It's how normal the response became. No outrage, no consequences, just accommodation, because box office numbers mattered more than discomfort, dignity, or truth. These legends weren't monsters. They were protected, and that protection came at a cost paid quietly by everyone around them. Hollywood sold perfection, but it ran on compromise. And the question that lingers isn't whether this could happen again, it's how often it already does under different lights, with different names, and the same silence.